Not long ago, I had a dream. The exact same dream my friend had the night before she disappeared. She dreamed that we'd meet somewhere in space, each of us imprisoned inside of a golden egg. In my dream, we also found each other out there in space. And I've interpreted this dream as a podcast. Hey, Andrew, how's it going?
Chromacopia, Chromacopia.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's been great. How you been doing?
There's ups and downs in life. As theoretically doing very well. There's a
That's
lot of
good.
shit on my mind, but that's just the way it be.
That's how it is sometimes.
Um, I suppose we should just like go with that, jump right in the challenge. But I will introduce us real quick. We are Additional Crew Film Review. You heard that in the theme song that happened right prior to this starting. I am Nick. This is Andrew. Andrew is the singer of the group.
Yes.
It let's jump into this challenge, dude.
Let's
I'm
get
already
into it.
inspired.
I've been excited to hear your thoughts on this since I brought it to your attention last week, man.
So
Talk texture.
Chromacopia. Yeah. Tyler the creator. I'm gonna just flat out say it. You've always been a fan. You've always been a big fan. You like as far as like the first time we heard it, you were bumping it all the time. So I'm gonna give you the spotlight at the end here. I'm gonna get my review out of the way first. All right.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna go ahead and say I haven't listened to a full album of his since Goblin. So there's like gonna be like lots of gaps in my knowledge here, and maybe in. But anyway, we're
But at the
gonna push
very
past
least,
that.
with that bit, what from where you started in Goblin
Mm-hmm.
and the transformation of where he's at now, is it like night and day?
I mean, it's very different. Like, let's talk about. I'll get into this because it is very
Okay.
different. It's 100% different almost. Goblin was very dark, and this is not what I would call very dark. So I was really pleasantly surprised by how many different parts of this album Tyler himself created. That video that you sent me, actually, that we ended up reposting, was very, very entertaining and very like educating. Really, um, it I can get behind videos like that. It easily adds more authenticity to the albums, adds more authenticity to the artist. It impresses me a lot. I know, I know somewhere on a deep level that all albums are being created by people. But was that really Tyler singing on the opening track?
I would imagine he, because I think there's a feature, Daniel Caesar, and I can be wrong, but I think it was Tyler's, not inflection, but the way he wanted the song to sound.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
He used his voice, and he's like, okay, I know there's a better singer than me, which is Daniel Caesar. So he probably brought in Daniel Caesar. Not to say that Tyler does not know how to sing. He actually sings a lot on the album that you'll find later. But I think he knew what he is capable of doing and what he's not. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
like that
Mm-hmm.
shows that level of artiste that like he's not trying to do it all. Like he is a producer on the album, so he has that like producer mentality to be like, okay, I know this person would sound so much better than I do, but I want it to sound like this.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, again, he shared that video, and the first thing was him like not hitting the notes exactly, but that's awesome. I'm going to talk about the actual album itself as far as where I come in. So, I really like the sudden swing and energy going from Saint Chroma to Ratata.
Oh, amazing!
Uh, I think Ratata was probably one of my favorite songs, just for the beats and the barking. That one, and barking might not be the right word, but it's the only word I can really come up with.
He does do a lot of grunting and just like he was doing that on his last album. Just a lot of like breathing patterns,
Mm-hmm.
different
Mm-hmm.
breathing.
And he uses that in a couple different places, like vocal instrumentation is percussion, right? And that's pretty interesting. Um, so Ratata was nice. That was a little bit more dark. I would say that was more in line with what I was expecting. But then immediately afterwards, we get Noid, which is another vibe shift. That's not necessarily like as open and areas songs further in. But I really, really enjoyed the I believe it's Nyanja language. The bits
The
that were added in
background
there.
sample he was using.
Yeah, and I don't know what they were saying. I didn't look that up. I did look up the language to make sure I had the right language, and that appears to be the one. Um, but The
Nyanja
sample
to
that
English. Yeah.
yeah, the sample he used was just phenomenal. Um, Darling, I've been into the R&B songs on these albums. If you haven't noticed, um, this is no exception. The message seems fine enough. Like doesn't exactly wow me, but this is again that layering of percussion sounds through the vocals and the vocal layering. And then just kind of like the jam on it, which is definitely something you can put into words. Is any of that singing done by Tyler? Do you know off the top of your head?
Again on Ratata Nori, that's all him. Darling I has a feature from Tizo Touchdown. I don't know where, and this is how good Tyler has gotten with his singing. Sometimes is that like it he kind of blends in way better than he has done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there are parts where I'm also kind of like, whoa, I didn't know you were able to do this. Like
Right, right,
I would hear it in Igor a couple times, but
because
this
this is
one,
what I was thinking. I'm like, based on his verses and the way his voice sounds like during the verses, I'm like, that couldn't be him. But on the other hand, he doesn't have to sound the same the whole way through. Um, but you get the vibe that he is definitely singing some of those songs. Hey Jane, Hey Jane, it's like a pertinent topic. It's an interesting look at it from different perspectives. As a song, I'm not like overly in love with this one. It kind of like it low key hit me kind of like an atmosphere song, which that just might show my like knowledge on hip hop in general. Um, I Killed You has it's my least favorite part of the album. And this is unfair to Tyler. Okay, this is 100% personal bias. So I Killed You. I have two very small children right now, and the beginning of that song sounds so much like the wheels on the bus, and I can't imagine that's not on purpose. And it might be something about the kid in the last song, and the fact that this is called "I Killed You." I might be also just misinterpreting that altogether. But whenever there's a song that sounds like one of the nursery rhymes that I've had to hear over and over and over and over and over again for the last 4 years, just don't like it. After that part, though, the simple percussion and strings kill it. I love that. So if I could cut off like the first 45 seconds of that song, I would really enjoy it. And again, that's not I can't take an unbiased view on that one. Let's see. Judge Judy. It's again a pertinent point to make in during this time of year. It is important, but the pun doesn't do a lot for me. The instrumentation mixing actually sounds really good. I really like the way the instruments sound, but the melody itself just doesn't speak to me. However, like as a producer, like sick, dude. Like that instrumentation sounds awesome. If you could make an album with that sort of production on instrumentation in this sort of genre that he's kind of hitting with the instrumentation itself, that would be an amazing album. After this, I'm gonna just pop through a bunch of the songs because there are parts that stand out to me, and the rest kind of like blends. Take Your Mask Off is clever for the characters it seems to choose, and I really like that. With that said, and I might be interpreting this wrong, but it seemed like Tyler included himself in that song. Like, so you had to take your mask off, and you're talking about different people, and then you're also talking about himself at the end. So he's including himself with this group,
mm-hmm.
and I think that makes it hit a lot harder, because it's like it can be introspective and towards other people at the same time. And then I hope you find your way home. The instrumentation at the end, it's so airy. I don't know what these instruments are called. I really wish I did because I'd love to comment on exactly what they are. But like the last maybe like 45 seconds to a minute of that song are they're so blissful, so nice. So what it comes down to me is that I think the production is phenomenal. The lyrics are pertinent in some of them. On other ones, I'm not as sure. And I did skip over some songs where to me they didn't have a lot going for me, but they weren't bad. They were just there, and I you might have a different perspective on that as it's 100%. Um, I'll give a number rating at the end, but Andrew, hit me with some knowledge.
I mean, I've been listening to this album since released easily, if not my favorite album that's came out this year outside of Vampire Weekend. Only God Was Above Us. Just there is very few artists nowadays that do a rollout for an album like Tyler does. Back in the day, hip hop artists used to do huge rollouts for their albums, and it would be like a spectacle to watch, to see them just like, you know, really create a world with the album they created. And Tyler does that with a lot of his social media being surrounded with uh, the color green and this very unique uh, font that he's using with each uh, title for his songs, and just really took time to be very meticulous the way he put together this album. And it almost seemed not rushed, but out of nowhere, because Tyler's been out of the game not for a long time, but we haven't heard from him making music uh, since his last project. If you're calling me, or if you get lost, call me, or call me when you get lost, something like that. I forget the name of it exactly, but he did a deluxe album, which added a few more songs. But after that, he was, you know, making clothing for Louis Vuitton with
Mm-hmm.
Pharrell, and
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to point out on like some of these tracks, most specifically, "Darling I" has the most Pharrell influencing sound that I've heard in a long time. Like, I mean, Tyler always tries to incorporate the Pharrell's influence in his albums, I feel, but "Darling I" just really like, I just, for me, that's what it sounded like. It sounded like a like an homage to like how Pharrell would make a song, but in Tyler's way.
Yeah, and it did hit me with that like retro sound, like like if they have a retro sound that it's not exactly how it was back then, but it kind
Yeah,
of
I
makes you
mean,
feel that way.
like if you would ever hear like Pharrell on a Snoop Dogg track, like what's that one he always does? The "Drop It Like It's Hot," and
Mm-hmm.
then even
Mm-hmm.
Timbaland sometimes, like that the Virginia Beach sound, like where a lot of these artists, these producers would come from. Like "Darling I" just encompasses that completely for me. But yeah, the last time I felt so passionate about a hip hop album like this, um, the earliest that comes to mind is "Damn" by Kendrick Lamar, because kind of like Tyler, "Damn" came out of nowhere. Like if you were following Kendrick Lamar, um, people were speculating when he would drop, and then I felt like out of nowhere, "Damn" came out, and people have their opinions on it already. It's been out for a while, but like when that album first came out, that was all over the place. Like everybody was listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was caught off guard, and that's what this feels like. And going even a little further back, what truly got me into even hip hop in general, because I used to listen to hip hop, but not like, I didn't follow it as much until I know this person is very controversial, but it is what it is. I think his music speaks for itself, and I could feel like a lot of people already know whose name I'm gonna pull out. But Kanye West, "My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy," changed the game for me completely. Like when that album came out, that like changed my whole perspective on how music can be written, how hip hop sounds. Like it was night and day with when that album came out, because like it was just for its time and just so forward thinking. And I feel this album for me is creating that nostalgia of just like, wow, he put 14 songs together so cohesively. And for me, it just plays off front to back. I rarely skip any of these songs. If
Mm-hmm.
anything, they're all play so well together that I don't want to skip a song. Um, it's funny that you had mentioned the and I killed you, the little round and round, because it is. I haven't been following the story all that much. I just been listening to the songs. I haven't been like consuming the lyrics as much as I would want to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've created this my own narrative of what's going on. I try to avoid um, the big channels that review music for
Sure.
that reason because I didn't want to get swayed in my opinion. I want my opinion to be my opinion. I didn't want them to have maybe uh, influenced my thought process, and
Right.
so I'm gonna go back and probably after this watch the reviews just to hear what they say. But I wanted this to be like unfiltered. I want this to be how I perceive the album, and um, at first I didn't get that. I honestly got there's this artist, and maybe one day I'll challenge you to listen to them, or you can listen to them whenever. But Little Ugly Mane, he's just like this. I think he's a Texas rapper,
I've definitely heard the name, but I don't
and
know
it
in
just
what.
gave me very much Little Ugly Mane production, and that's why I went with it more. But I could hear like your influence because you hear it from like hearing these nursery rhymes and whatnot, and so that's where your brain taps into. Where my brain taps into like a Little Ugly Mane production.
Hey, man, I'm very jealous of that. It's not a bad
Uh,
thing. Enjoy it.
what I will say also is just the opener. Saint Chroma is like for me like just a perfect way to open up this album because from start to finish, it feels like a feature length film, and um, Tyler is trying to get into that world. I'm not sure if you were tracking at all that Tyler is planning on directing a film or written a film, and he has Timothy Chalamet in a project. So,
No, I've watched The Grinch though, so
and he has done scores for that. Yeah, I did not watch that. What do you think of that?
it was okay.
Yeah,
Not his fault. Just
no,
it
sure.
was it's hard to compare it to other versions of The Grinch favorably.
And I mentioned that it feels like a film because in Saint Chroma, kind of how I opened the pod, he kind of starts out by just like these breathing patterns and just going chromacopia. Like it's such an easy mantra to sing. Like I found myself singing it in the hallway by myself at work because it's
Oh
just
yeah.
so easy and a catchy uh, phrasing. The way he sings it, it's so easy to get like earwormed into your head. And he started off the album like that, and at the end, you can hear the closing, the whisper in the back of just like the fading of the chroma code. You hear it, and it just feels like an end credits
Mm-hmm.
portion of a film where like you're like black screening in
And
the
you know that's
movie.
like some classical production shit. So that's like the overture, right? And you started off that way to give the vibe, and then you end it that way to say "see you later."
This is the bookend.
Yeah, I the most popular version that I know is like a Simon and Garfunkel album. It's not even relevant, but
It's relevant enough for our podcast. You know, Simon Garfunkel has popped up,
it's true. It's true.
so it's relevant for the podcast, if anything else.
Okay, so I'm hearing just glowing. Um,
Glowing reviews. Um, Noid. I'm so happy he used the word Noid. It's such a small thing to get giddy about, but I
mhm.
feel like it's a small nod to um, what used to be your local band, my local band here in Sacramento, Death Grips. They have a song called "I've Seen Footage" where they constantly repeat, "I've seen footage, I stay noided, I've seen footage, I stay noided," and he uses noid and noided like nobody uses noid unlike Death Grips and now Tyler because
So
what's up?
can I ask you a question about that song? Because I did like that song a lot, but I'm always curious in certain ways because I always assume they're like a little bit tongue in cheek in like how worried they are. But do you think it's like a fully serious song about how paranoid Tyler actually is, or do you think it is tongue in cheek?
I think it for me, what I kind of see it as, I wonder if, all right, this is could be from a fan perspective. He gets kind
Mm-hmm.
of like norded out by the fact that like he is this figure, and how many people are just kind of viewing him as this like person that they don't understand why this person's in their neighborhood and has this
Mm-hmm.
much money and he looks
Mm-hmm.
this way. Like, because I'm assuming the neighborhood he lives in has a bunch of like affluent people that don't all look like Tyler's age or like where he's at in life. So that could be that feeling of just like um, weariness of just like, wow, am I going to be like targeted for whatever reason?
Mm-hmm.
And um, but there's also this other perspective that I haven't read into it, but just talking it out loud, and maybe it could be a situation where how his father, who from what I know right now, I don't think he's ever met, and if he has, I don't know that he has. From what the story he's kind of been telling us,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it just kind of says to me like, what if his father feels this kind of like, you know, person's kind of looking over their shoulder, like,
Yeah.
is that who it may be? You know, like,
Uh-huh.
does Tyler know he exists in this situation and that situation? And like, I don't know. It could be a lot of things. Again, I haven't delved too deep into the lyrics.
This is fair.
Were
It
there
hasn't
lyrics
been
that
out
you
very
pulled
long.
out?
Did you say what are the lyrics I pulled out?
Were there lyrics in that song that you pulled out that?
No, I was actually just curious. I don't remember specifics. I just remember
Yeah,
he sounded very worried about someone like breaking in. I'm like, I that feels tongue in cheek, but I just don't know enough. Like maybe it's not.
yeah. It just sounds very much like, okay, I'm in the spotlight. I don't like being
Mm-hmm.
take like, I don't want to be seen as this person. Like, I get where I at in life and people are interested to see me in certain situations, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's okay for you to constantly do this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a weird concept of fame to be like, okay, now that you're famous, now we're allowed to take pictures with willingly, like without your
Right.
permission.
Right. Like you're open your free game.
Yeah, like just because I got famous now, um, I give up my rights to privacy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
It's like that makes sense. I wanted to ask that because that was one that like stood out for me where I'm like I'm having a hard time figuring out how tongue in cheek it is.
this album at times felt very Beatle esque. Just with the productions, the way certain things sounded, it sounded like something that I could hear Paul McCartney almost producing. Like some with some of these sounds, I feel like I had noted like I think Tomorrow as one of those songs. The ending to I hope you find your way home. Like there's just certain things that like listening to music over time that it's hard not to create links for
Mm-hmm.
yourself
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
kind of make these unique but familiar sounds. So I wish I could describe it better, but to me, there's parts that just sounded very Beatle-esque.
I mean, if I took a shot at it, and this is your opinion, so you can tell me if I'm wrong here. What I hear is like there's musical journeys that happen in some of these songs, and the instrumentation, it's excessive is the wrong word, but it's abundant, right? Because it's not excessive in that it doesn't fit or it's too much. It's just that there's a lot of instrumentation going on. There's a lot of layering going on. There's a lot of texture that happens, and it's all still centered around a pop hook, something that you can still get into, in a harmony that doesn't completely lose yourself, or lose the audience, I guess in this case. And that's not like overly common at this point, because a lot of times if you have someone who's like, I'm going to throw in 8 different instruments and I'm going to have an extra 45 seconds to a minute at the end of the song where it's just instrumentation and everything's going, usually they're all competing sounds. Here they're all working towards a common goal. So it's almost like it's orchestrated, right? Like it's music that's not just felt, it's written out, it's thought about.
Yeah, it gave me very much a day in the life energy by the end, and it felt very Sergeant Pepper just from start to finish. It just gave me such a Sergeant Pepper feel, and
Yep.
um, again, it's a stretch. You might a lot of people might not see it that way, but that's how it made me feel.
Yeah. Yeah. You know.
Um, I'll short. Um, I'll round it out with this one little thing that I I made a note of tomorrow. I think it's becoming one of my favorite songs outside of I mean the same chroma into Ratata into Noid is just like it's hard to beat that. And obviously for me, I like the punchiness of Thought I Was Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm in the right mood, Sticky is just like perfect. But I think Tomorrow is going to be that sleeper, that track I always go back to because it is so relatable to myself, maybe you as well. Just we're maybe not as much as you, but for me, because you have kids and I don't have kids right now, and
Mm-hmm.
Tyler is around our age. He's 33,
Yeah, makes
and
sense.
it's just so relatable to hear how much he struggles with this because it's something that I sometimes think about. Like I'm growing up, and starting a family is important, but you try not to let it affect you. But you're always left wondering, like, is it gonna happen, or when am I gonna get my chance, or is it gonna go in this direction, or like, and we don't know till tomorrow sometimes. And I'm not sure if that's what he was insinuating by calling it tomorrow, but it's just hard to not put myself in that narrative that he created. And obviously, I like his braggadocious. Like he makes very fun braggadocious rhymes. Like it, it's so tongue in cheek. It's so Tyler. It's and that's the last thing I'll say. Tyler has definitely carved out a lane where it's a Tyler album. There are so
Mm-hmm.
many hip hop clones in the world. And so it's so nice to know that Tyler is still doing what he's doing. And I never wrote him off, but I fell off after Wolf and Cherry Bomb
Okay.
because I think I was just in a different musical landscape. I was
Hundred
listening to
percent.
different
100%.
stuff.
When you have an artist who's been around, well, like a decade at this point, I assume, right? It's just hard
Yeah.
to stay with them for that long.
Yeah. And so I stuck with them till Goblin and I kind of fell off. And then when Flower Boy, Igor, and now um, Call Me If You Get Lost, and now um, Chromocopia, I'm like, okay, I am a forever fan. Until you show me otherwise that you don't got what it takes anymore, which I don't see that happening. I think Tyler is probably the most creative artist out there right now who's doing it. And it's so amazing to see because, like, again, from start to finish, where he's at, where he started, is just like he's been killing it. And so I have nothing but praises to say about this album.
Yeah. I mean, it hits, it hits. I will also double back and say you talked about the role in the beginning. The imagery for this album is wonderful. It's just it did hit pretty quick, and it was very effective. Um, just a really cool marketing campaign prior to the album coming out, or hype campaign. I don't know exactly what to call it.
Yeah, it's just an album rollout that is
Mhm.
second to none right now.
I could guess what you're gonna give it, but you want to give it a number? You want to throw a number out there for me?
Yeah, what you gonna guess?
I'm gonna guess you're gonna give it a perfect score.
Yeah, it's a 10, dude. It's
Yeah.
definitely a 10. Like
Uh,
it comes with its flaws for sure. Like, but this is what this album makes me feel, and so for me, that's a 10.
mhm.
Like, I'm sure I'm gonna come back to this album and not like some of the songs, and that's I think that's totally fine and fair for an album. Like,
Mhm. No.
um,
Yeah.
I go back to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and I don't like all the songs, but I consider that like a perfect album for myself as well.
No, again, it's hard to keep the same music taste after X amount of years, regardless of how much you love something. Um, I'm giving
But
it a solid 8. I enjoyed it a lot, and this is like
yeah,
again, it's not the lane that I'm normally in, so this is it's an album I actually will go back to some of the songs and listen to, and it can grow on me further than that. I mean, if you heard my criticisms, they weren't strong criticisms,
yeah,
so.
I think the songs you like outweigh the songs that you don't like, and those are such
Mm-hmm.
an easy skip.
Mm-hmm.
Because oh, another thing I want to mention is like a lot of hip hop albums don't do skits anymore, and not to say that this album does that, but it does do it in a way that like helps push the narrative and the song forward without having to like make it clunky. And I always did not like that about certain songs or skits where they make the album feel clunky and kind of like
Yeah, I feel you. There's this album, Minstrel Show by Little Brother, that I really love every one of the songs, but the skits are like minute 45, and they're not funny.
and just ruin the pacing.
It's like, damn, dude, sucks. All right, yeah, I didn't feel that in this at all, personally.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I cannot praise this album enough, and I hopefully get a chance to go see it perform live. We'll see if it ends up happening. He is playing at the Golden One Center, so we'll see.
Um, if you can't make it there, he's playing at Moda in Portland. So I also heard you have a couple bands you wanted to shout out. So we're talking about music.
Oh,
Let's go ahead and keep
yeah.
talking about music.
Just quickly, I listened to two albums. One's an EP, one's an album, one's a collab. The collab is an album between Lil Yachty and James Blake, which are two artists that I thought would never blend,
Mm-hmm.
but do so well. And it is quite amazing to listen to these two do what they're good at, which is James Blake on production, his keys, his soft, silky voice on top of Lil Yachty's, and I say this with the most respect, cartoony, autotune type sound, but he does it so psychedelically. Like, it's hard to imagine hip hop and autotune being psychedelic.
Am I wrong? He just released an album that was almost all psychedelic, right? Like in very,
He did.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I actually listened to that one, so I know what I actually can follow along with this.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it, but
I'm gonna
it was
pull
a
it up really
very,
quick as I'm talking about it. And I didn't listen to that all that much because it did not grab me
yeah,
off for first listen. Not to say it was bad. I listened to like the first. Let's start here. Is the name of the album? It opened up well. I think the length of the album is what kind of like
yeah, sure, that makes sense. The pacing's a little rough with how long it is.
yeah, and and the first song is almost 7 minutes long,
Mm-hmm. So if it
which
doesn't
is
hit
a
you right there,
very
you're like,
that is a that's a risk.
mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm.
a very huge risk, and he's. I mean, the album explains itself. It took a risk for him to even do this. So I get like fuck it, we'll just go do risk all over. Um, but all I was gonna say was that like he is not doing a disservice to psychedelics at all. Like the sound, like it's
Mm-hmm.
so fun and unique that like he's doing this because who else? You know, I don't know any other artists are so willing to do something like this in
Yeah,
the mainstream.
yeah, that's the thing. I don't know any that are doing it in the mainstream. I know, and I'm not gonna say all of his albums are good, but Nick Hakim's first album, which I should remember the name of off the top of my head, but of course I don't. Very good psychedelic soul. And I am looking it up just to tell people. Green Twins. So it's a different flavor of it, though. It's for sure a different flavor of it. But yeah.
Yeah, and just for people to, I don't know if I named the album. It's called Bad Chromeo. Bad Cameo, Bad Chromeo. I have like Chromacopia on my head. Bad Cameo.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing uh, album. I knocked it out of the park. I just go there for the sonics. Don't play too much mind to the lyrics. I'm sure he has really great lyrics. I was listening to some of the lyrics, but just go into that album for the vibes. And that's such a weird and such a dated thing now to say, but it really is just like a vibe out album. Just listen to it in the background. You're not going to be displeased. At least I would hope not, because there's just some really nice, sweet production by James Blake. And then the next album, or EP, I should say, shortly we'll mention, is by an artist that we talked about in the past, part of the challenge. The Garden put out a 6 Desperate Ballads EP, and it's chaotic, it's fun, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and I think it's just like oh, we're still here, we're still making music, so
Mm-hmm.
we'll come out with something soon, but
Right. They're like,
hopefully this.
we don't want to lose the spot, right? We got cool. Um, I have a few band shoutouts that I'll do, and then I'll give you your challenge. I'll go through them pretty quick here. So, with this last Friday, which was like November 8th, I'm guessing off the top of my head, a couple European acts came out with albums that just like really, in general, hit a good spot for me. So there's a group called Nothingheads. They came out with an album
Nothing
called The
hands
Art
or nothing hits.
Nothingheads.
Nothing heads.
Yeah, and they came out with an album called The Art of Sod. And just this is a pure punk. It's not like hardcore. It's not any of the cores attached to it. It's pure punk, but the guitar, the riffage in this album is just insane. Like it just hits, and it's just riff after riff after riff. Um, Heavy without having to be heavy, you know. It really just, I don't know. It hit something in the old lizard brain, you know. Um,
The gizzard.
and it's not like that. It's really more like punk. I think I showed someone and they're like, this is like proper UK punk. Like this is just it hits, but the
Oh, okay.
guitar riffage is so good. I have to say
Okay.
it again. And then there's also a band from Leeds called Thank, Thank. Uh, they came out with an album called I Have a Physical Body That Can Be Harmed. And again, this one's more of like a post-hardcore album. There's a lot of screaming. There's a proper amount of noise rock in it, and the lyrics are pretty poignant to today. Just very angry, but also, as they describe it, there's some disco elements. So there's a little bit of pop hooks and catchiness going on in here.
Ooh, I'm a fan of that.
If you do listen to it, Andrew, I'm going to guess that you're not going to like the first track very much. Push through or
All
skip
right.
it. Because
I'll
after
listen
that,
to it
it picks
once
up.
and not if I don't like it, I won't go back.
And then
I've added these both to my Spotify, so I'm gonna check them out.
hell yeah. The last one is Common Wounds. They have an album called All Night Blood that didn't come out this last week, but I've really been digging into it. I love it. It's almost like a old '90s post hardcore feel. So you think like Drive Like Jehu, Unwound, something like that. And I find myself going back to that album quite a bit right now.
Okay.
It's not like overly heavy. The singer is screaming the whole time, but like his screams aren't super heavy screams, so they're not like overly chaotic, and it's got a lot more melody to it than I think I would say is typical in that sort of music. And that's it for my shout out. So I'm gonna give you your challenge now. So your challenge is
All
a
right.
group that I love. I think that their lyrics are some of the best lyrics in the game.
Dang. Okay.
The melodies and hooks are surprising. because they almost feel like they shouldn't be there, but then they kind of just dig their way into you.
Mm-hmm.
And they managed to not make heavy music that feels kind of heavy. But anyways, this band's been around for a while now. Proto Martyr,
Okay.
their album that I'm going to have you listen to, because they've got a few now. I'm going to have you listen to Under Color of Official Right.
Okay.
So that's not their first album. It's their second album. It was like their first one that kind of broke through to the mainstream ish.
Okay.
I wouldn't call them mainstream, but the mainstream ish. And yeah, there's a lot that I love in this album. The stage presence of this band is the most wild thing, because this lead singer is not someone who you would think would be charismatic, and yet somehow he manages to draw all the attention in the room. But yeah, so that's my challenge for next time. This isn't an album that's new. They don't have anything new coming out. This is just an album that I think that everyone should listen to. Like, this is
Yeah,
one
sure.
that's, I think, is like a full on classic for me.
It's a creepy looking album cover.
Yeah, yeah.
You have
They are a post punk album, or a post punk group. They the lyrics are introspective, and they can be critical, but they're not overly like pointed. Most of the time, they're the singer Joe Casey's his name. He is very well read, and he's very introspective with what he talks about usually.
mm-hmm.
And I find that usually hits a lot harder when you're introspective and true with yourself, and you find something that needs to be discussed. But
You have
that's
it
it.
on vinyl?
I do, yeah.
How's it look
I
on
think I
vinyl?
have their whole discography on vinyl. I really like Proto Martyr. Just in general, I don't think that they have an album of theirs that's like below. I think the lowest is probably like a 7 out of 10 for me.
Oh snap! Well, we'll
Yeah.
find out later where this one falls.
Yep.
So, all right, yeah, sounds good. I'll check it out.
All right. So we're almost to Spoorloos. We're almost there. But one last thing is that I did watch a movie this week. It's fairly new, so I'm going to go ahead and hit it on this podcast. It's Heretic. So Heretic, it's a movie, and okay, I'll preface real quick. It's a new movie in theaters. I'm not going to give that many spoilers,
Okay.
because if you want to see it, and if you're interested after hearing what I say, I'm not going to tell you everything that happens. But I am going to give it a review. It's a fair review. Heretic is a movie that really hits certain marks and falls flat in others. It won't be the first or last horror movie to fall apart in the third act and end up missing some of its potential. But it really does set up some super cool ideas that only end up letting you down. Where the movie shines is in the acting and the characters as they are presented. Hugh Grant is such a wonderful bad guy. He just is.
Oh, he's in
Um,
this.
yeah, he's the. It's very clear from this isn't a spoiler. He is the bad guy. Like the movie
Makes it
poster.
fair.
Yeah,
Oh, how's it? Okay,
yeah.
so you're very well known to find this out.
And so both of the missionaries that end up at his house are also wonderful actors. But the movie's confusing. Like,
Oh, is it
is it?
religious? Yeah, I mean, it would make sense. It's religious because it's called Heretic.
Yeah, yeah, and it is religious, and religion is a big theme. I don't think that you're going to go into this movie and it's going to change your mind about anything. No matter where you stand, you're going to probably stand there at the end.
Is it gonna have like
Um,
a? I guess I won't ask because it might
it,
spoil something. So I'll let you finish.
I'm going to guess what you're thinking. I'm going to say it doesn't, just for you. Uh,
Okay.
but the movie's confusing. Like, it kind of feels like at the beginning it wants to be an escape room movie. Doesn't really do that. Is it like a religious horror? Kinda, but it's a little bit hard to parse out. Is it something that gets out of hand? And by that I mean, like, it feels like it could go real dark during certain parts, and then it just kind of doesn't. So I feel like they had like a lot of good ideas, and then they got too worried about like getting too out there and strange with the movie, so they pulled back. And without spoiling anything else, it is interesting enough, and it is worth a view if you are in the mood for this. Like, it can't be said, like, Hugh Grant needs to do more horror movies. He needs to be a villain in more films, because whatever that weird eye thing that he does in every one of his movies, where it's like, and listeners can't see that, but it's like raised eyebrows with like a certain British cheekiness. um, it works because it just does. 6 out of 10.
Yeah,
That's
to
my
watch,
final.
but
Yeah,
you know,
it's not going to change your world.
it's not gonna change your world. But who knows? It might. You might find it to be the best film. Some people just have different opinions on certain things. Like you'll be talking to somebody and they'll tell you it's the best film they've ever watched, and then we'll go and watch it. It's like, oh, that's kind of boring. Dog Soldier is one of those examples. I don't mean to shit on that film. I know we're not talking about Dog Soldier. It just, man, I still think
People,
about that. Like,
some people love it. I mean, you know, and that's what
it
happens a
is
lot.
what it is. Yeah, I think they might love it for different reasons that we might not. So
You know, it's all there's a world of experiences lead us to our opinions today. Um, yeah, it's one of these like I've heard two different people talking about the movie. And one of them was like, "Oh, I'm glad that movie bashed religion," and the other person's like, "I'm glad that movie stood up for religion." And I'm like, that means it didn't have very clear messaging.
it leaves it up to interpretation. You know what? That's perfect. Don't try to persuade me into believing what you want me to believe.
So with that said, you have anything else?
Now let's jump right into it.
Let's hit this. Let's hit this movie because we're 45 minutes in. Yeah.
Yeah, we're deep. All right.
Okay. So we are talking. Well, I guess I should say we bring to you Rex and Saskia, a young couple in love. They are on vacation. They stop at a busy service station, and Saskia is abducted. After 3 years and no sign of Saskia, Rex begins receiving letters from the abductor. That is the 1988 film Spoorloos, or more easily understood for our American audience, The Vanishing. This isn't to be confused with the 1993 Vanishing, which was a remake directed by the same director, very similar to Speak No Evil and how they did that. That's starring Jeff Bridges, Kiefer Sutherland. So people you definitely know. This movie is, I'm going to go ahead and say, starring people you definitely don't know. Here you have Bernard Pierre Donadieu. And I apologize to anyone who's like, you don't speak French. I don't speak French. I don't even know how to pronounce it, to be real. Jean Bervetz and Johanna Ter Steege. There are some other small actor parts, but I don't feel like they're particularly noteworthy in this one. So, this is a movie that has a lot of critical praise.
From some high,
Yeah.
high uh, towers, you know.
Yeah, I suppose we'll talk about like context of the film. This is a 1988 film. It was the idea was that it was going to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Foreign Film, but it got denied because it used both the Dutch language and the French language, and it was too interchangeable. So like they couldn't figure out what country to put it under. This is like the little bit of like
Whoever the
knowledge
director
together.
was, who was the director?
George
He's French-born Dutch
Sluizer.
filmmaker. Oh man, that does not make it easier.
No, he's like, I can do everything, and they're like, no, you can't, not allowed. Yeah, so George Sluizer, he directed this. He did not write it. This is based on a novel.
The Golden Egg.
Yeah, The Golden Egg. And I just assumed that novel was pretty much the same as what we saw here. So the movie, just to give like the quickest synopsis of all time, guy goes on the trip with his wife. I'm pretty sure they were husband and wife. They did mention that it was his wife, but I'm like, anyway, he goes on a trip with his wife. They go to a gas station. Wife disappears. Guy gets obsessed and continues looking for her for 3 years. He doesn't find her. Raymond finds him, and Raymond offers him the ultimate, the ultimatum.
Closure.
That's why it's called ultimatum. He's like, do you want knowledge or do you want to be safe?
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of the biggest themes of this movie is like the price of knowledge and what you have to give up for knowledge, because well, I'll just say it, Rex made the worst decisions in pursuit of knowledge, but also I didn't blame him for a second.
He got the ultimate closure.
Literally.
Yeah. Doesn't get any more closure than that. You figured it out right there and then, but also you're stuck.
Yeah. So but before we get too far into this, I'm like of two minds about this film a little bit, and
Okay,
I will bring this up just so that way the rest of my discussion is tinted with this indecision that I'm facing.
perfect.
So, uh, on one hand, I had maybe hyped myself up a little bit for this movie, and I had heard that it was terrifying, and I heard it was horrifying, and it would stay with you forever. And
It may. You may still
it
be.
it may. I think as someone who watches a lot of horror movies and a lot of horror thrillers, I'm trying to like get into the context of this film. So this film is 1988, right? And so if you think about the 80s, the only film that like immediately comes to mind is I think it's like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, which was 1986, and that one was also like banned in certain countries. And if you watch it now, it doesn't hit the same way. These are like topics that weren't thought of, and this movie takes place. I don't want to say primarily because I think Rex is still the main character, but Raymond, I'm going to call him the villain. Uh, he is a focal point of this film, and he is humanized, and he is shown practicing, and he is shown making mistakes, and he is shown with his family, he's shown having these discussions. And I don't think in this time there was a lot of films that really humanized a killer this way. I think what made people so scared of this film was like, hey, this dude is just a dude, and yet he's capable of this stuff. Like, look at him; he makes mistakes, he makes jokes. Um,
He lives a normal life
mhm.
outside of this horrific, you know, act.
Yeah, and so fast forward to the year 2024, and we've had like two remakes of this movie, and so many other movies that touch on the same kind of idea, and TV shows that touch on the same idea. That it's hard to get as wowed by this topic. But so where
That
I'm having the difficulty is like parsing out my expectations and the experiences I have now versus the actual film itself and the time it came out and what it said. Which is not new to me. It's not new to anyone really, but so everything I'm gonna say is gonna come as like this like two-edged sword. On one hand, it's great, and on the other hand, it was great.
yeah, it
Um,
plays it plays its part in the time that it was directed, and it can be seen as something, you know, horrifying at the time, but now it just seems kind of, you know, not run
mhm,
of the mill, but like, oh, I thought that was gonna be way more scary. There was like more thrill than scariness,
yeah,
and I thought I was gonna be like taken down a hostile type route, and kind of expecting something grotesque or, you know, macabre, like
yeah.
some like cannibal holocaust type scary. I don't know, especially for the time being the 80s.
That's the thing. Like being buried alive, in theory, is like one of the most terrifying ways to die,
Oh,
right?
I hate. Yeah, I hated that.
But like we've had a whole movie where a person's been buried throughout the whole runtime at this point. Like Ryan Reynolds was in it. It wasn't like some out there no one's ever heard of a movie. It's called Buried. So like this topic has also been redone in different ways.
There's a
Um,
Ryan Reynolds film where he's just buried.
yeah, it's called Buried. Not super original. I'm like 99% sure. Yeah, Buried 2010. Um, but anyway, that's not. I don't feel like I can take that away from this film though, because that's not really fair. It's just one of those like the shock factor's gone for me at this point, and
Sure.
some of that's watching so many movies and focusing on the genres I watch, and the other part is just that like, well, okay, I will say this like as a premise, knowing that anybody could potentially do this if they just practiced, had the space to do it, and had the weird whatever drive that he had since he was a kid is absolutely terrifying. And the fact that in this film he made someone completely just disappear by burying them, and in the 80s they couldn't figure that out because what are they going to do? He was talking about dusting the coins in the coffee machine for fingerprints, and they didn't even try that. I don't think.
No, it's like this guy costs way too much money. We don't have the money. We don't have the resources. Do you know how many things are happening in the world right now? Like we don't have time and resources to spend on trying to figure out where this one person's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Who has sure it's a human life, but like at the grand scheme of things, is like I can't spend my whole task force looking for this person.
Well, and it's a major gas station hub in Europe. I think they talked about how no matter which way you drive, getting out of this town, you'll end up at that gas station. So, and they make it very clear on the first scene when Rex and Saskia arrive at the gas station. It's a busy place. There are so
Yeah,
many people there. There's so many cars.
yeah,
There's so much going on. So like, I imagine like it wouldn't be unheard of for someone to have just ran away at this place, or someone to have just
for sure, dude. Like the way that certain gas stations operate, they're seeing hundreds of thousands of people per day, and for them to kind of like pinpoint and before the cameras were a thing like common at a
mm-hmm.
gas station. I'm sure there was one, but like it was probably like low grade. Like they're looking for cars, not for people or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
I uh I just think that like so in this light it is a terrifying thing because it goes through the motions of like what happened during the day, what happened leading up to this. Like we see all of the motive, all of the planning that goes into making something like this happen. And we see the goofiness. This guy is not really a professional. He's not really an expert. You don't need to be an expert to just make things work if everything falls in your way. And for
Yeah,
Saskia, all
he
you
just gave
really
up.
he was like done. He was like, "Oh, this sucks. I'm over this." And then she just happened to ask him for fucking change, and that's all that led to her. I presumably dying. I have to assume she was also buried. That
Yeah,
he wasn't
because
lying about that.
no, I think he really just told him like, you will soon find your answers. You may not like what you find, but you'll find your answers.
Yeah,
And destiny has a way of working itself out.
and yeah.
Even
So
though you're talking about predestiny and what's destined for you and what's not destined for you, I don't know. That not that it was confusing. It's just I was trying to grasp what he was trying to say. Like he is obviously a sociopath. I'm glad that he made that a note. Like, I am a sociopath.
hmm and then they took the time to really show some of the sociopathic like moments. Like we're not talking about Inside Out, but if you think like core memories from Inside Out, his core memories were all sociopathic bullshit. Like I could jump off a balcony. I could jump off a
Yeah.
bridge to save someone to make myself seem really cool.
Which
Um,
I mean, cool story and all, but that doesn't really. You wanted to you wanted to see because it's not what is expected. Is that
mhm.
like was that the theme of that? Like, oh, since I'm not supposed to do it, I want to do it.
I think it's more just like a character study, right? So like even if it doesn't push the plot forward, it adds a little bit of depth to this guy, and it shows that like even if he's got a family, even he's still calculated around his family, right? Like he's like, oh, I need them to not assume I'm killing people, so I'm gonna show them that I'm actually a good guy. I'm actually a hero. And
Oh, but do you think he was having those thoughts before? Was he having those thoughts? And then he so happened to become a hero. I was like, oh, there's no way they can ever see me as this person who's done such a heinous act. Now that
mhm.
I've just saved another being, no way I would be a suspect.
Yeah, and I
But this
do
was
think,
during his practice.
uh, I don't know the exact time frame. It
Yeah,
might
I
have
don't
been
know the
during or
timeline
like
of that.
right beforehand, but it was after he had his family, and the kids looked about the same age, so I would assume it's about
Yeah,
right
you're
before
right.
practice.
You're probably right on this one. So yeah,
Uh, and it was one of those like he just took the opportunity and he saw it and he's like, oh, this is it. This is how I can manipulate them forever with this one act. Um,
I mean, yeah, he didn't have to do much explaining to his wife, stating that he's like the only Frenchman who's in a monogamous relationship.
yeah, she's just I thought the his wife is probably like the biggest missing link in his whole entire story to me, because his wife is just, she's
A
not,
white cat. There's not a
yeah,
lot going on with it.
she doesn't care. She's
She
like,
doesn't care.
well, I do go to that house all the time, and he's like, it's passion. It's passion. She's like, but yeah, but you're driving an extra like 30 miles each time. Don't question me. It's passion. And she's like, okay, you're right. It's like, is he right? You could push maybe a little harder on this one. When he gets the table out and he has the daughter look into it and it's full of spiders, they all just laugh. You
He's
know,
kind of
like,
a dick. But
yeah,
he's also
and
a sociopath. He likes to see people in horrible situations and to see how they react.
yeah, and that was definitely planted, right? Because he was definitely trying to see if his neighbors could hear screaming.
That's also true. Because it would be a natural cause for you to scream. And
Mm-hmm.
so without having to be like, oh, I'm going to be so random myself and start screaming, I have now a reason to start screaming.
All right, he turns into a fun game. He's like, let's test the neighbors' ability to hear this. I what One thing I really enjoyed was that I had watched the trailer to this film beforehand, and they had made this movie look very surreal, right? Like very out there and very strange, because they have the part where he's like holding his arm up and he's like pretending to hold it, but they don't give any context. So it's just this guy going, holding his arm up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And they show the parts where they're screaming, and it's like, this movie's going to be a bizarre thing. It's going to be completely strange, and I guess it is, but in context, every move he makes tracks, makes a lot of sense. Um, and I think that's something that might be the whole entire part of this movie that still gives it a lot of gravitas for me, is that as a character study, they really do a good job at keeping Raymond grounded. He feels like a real person, which is kind of fucked up, right?
Yeah, we see him in his daily job
Mm-hmm.
doing being a professor, and not that I questioned his ability to be smart. I just kind of was wondering, like, how does he know so much about like chloroform and how many cc's it takes and the time to do it? Like, he literally timed himself to see how long chloroform would wear off.
He was clever.
He was clever,
Like,
and maybe that's why it was so scary to like. Do we really want to put these pieces and make it so available for people to reenact?
this is probably just an anti-intellectualism film. It's like, you don't teach people things; they'll use it to kill people and bury them. Uh,
Essentially, they're like, oh, I never really thought of it like that, and then you're left with like more, you know, well planned kidnappers. Like, fuck, we weren't supposed to give him the keys to
I've
the castle.
right. I've never seen someone with such a bad goatee have
He looked
so
like
much.
Eric Wareheim, not Eric, Tim Heidecker at first.
And like Tim Heidecker, but if he had been listening to Disturbed over and over again for like
Yeah,
5 years, and it was like, this is a terrible goatee, and yet he has so much character depth. Like, I've never seen this guy with this goatee have so much character depth. Maybe Sons of Anarchy, but I didn't really watch much of that.
and the characters themselves were very interesting to follow
Mm-hmm.
throughout. I mean, minus the wife, the children, the wife being Raymond's wife.
Mm-hmm.
They're, they're just kind of pushing narrative, but everyone else that was involved, Saskia, Rex especially, and Raymond, just really fantastic performances.
Really, truly fantastic performances. Rex was a very interesting character. He's just
Yes, because he seemed torn a lot of the time.
I, and it's hard to get a beat on Rex. Like, so in the very first like sequence, I won't call it scene because it's not the first scene, but the first sequence, he's in this car with Saskia, and they run out of gas in the tunnel. Which, first off, if you're about to run out of gas, you're an idiot. Sorry, Rex, but
Yeah, no,
stupid.
Rex is an idiot because he was giving Saskia hella grief about like, hey, are you driving? Don't worry about how much gas I got. And then he goes off and loses gas at the worst fucking time.
I It's just like that whole sequence to me. I'm like, what are we getting from Rex out of this scene? Because we're definitely getting that he's impetuous, that he's like he's not perfect. He's definitely got his problems, and he was also kind of a dick to Saskia. Like when he's walking away and she's screaming like "Don't leave me here," it's like, yeah, this is a really bad place to leave her, Rex.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, I get it. You're like in survival mode, and you're
Hmm.
like left to want to protect, but at the same time, like you could take her with you. What's preventing you other than the fact that like maybe she slows you down, or she you want her to? You're not gonna want to stay with the car. I'm glad she was smart enough to like go on the other side of the like.
100%.
It would have been smarter if she went into the way that he had gone, so that way he knows that eventually he's gonna return. I don't have to
Hmm.
panic and find out where she had gone off to. But at the same time, at least she was smart enough to like leave the car.
No, no joke. Because I was like, you can't leave her here in the middle of a tunnel. Like these are cars from I don't know how old it was. It looked like like early '80s, late '70s car, and I'm like, what if the battery dies in this shit? No one's gonna be able to see this in a tunnel. That tunnel's dark as shit. They're gonna destroy it, and Saskia dies.
Oh, 100%. I didn't even think about the battery. Like you can't leave that on because now you're fucked in two ways. Oh shit, we lost gas. We got no battery now.
Right, right. So it's like, Rex, take her with you, man. Like, what are you gonna lose? So Rex started off as this like character where you're like questioning, like, how good of a dude is this guy?
Yeah, how his level of rationality is not very good. He doesn't
Hmm.
rationalize very well.
And then you have Saskia, who seems like just the like most bubbly, like, yeah, that really sucked, and you're kind of a jerk, but okay, I'll forgive you. And she seemed very like pleasant, outgoing. She just seemed. I don't even know if like naive is not the right word because we didn't learn that much about Saskia, but
Yeah.
she just seemed like an extrovert that was like a pleasant version one, you know.
Yeah, she just seemed happy to be with Rex.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes like this the most damning of all of it is that that's gonna be one of her last memories. You know,
Yeah.
like they came back and they played frisbee for a second, but like, you think that made her whole day better? I'm doubtful.
No. That
Uh,
that frisbee's the last memory he has of her, and for her, the last memory she probably has like, I was just buying my husband a keychain. How'd I end up in this box?
Seriously sad. Um, but so Rex then, after we see him be a dick and then try to make things up and then like move forward, ends up obsessively looking for her. And obsessively is a strong word. 3 years seems like a lot, but I have to question Rex. So the girl that was with him, the lady, the woman, I don't remember her name.
Something Lenka, Lenka,
Okay, that was
Lenk,
Linicky. She
Lenky.
That was his girlfriend, right?
I believe so. It seemed like at first it seemed like she was part of the like search party
Mm-hmm.
task force, like because it looked like he had really set up a task force to try to find her, and she became part of that, and then that blossomed into a relationship.
I I remember one scene where they were driving up to the house when we have like the one little like confused, not confused, like hallucination of Saskia. We have the one scene where he's driving up to that house and she says, "I don't want to be a part of a menage a trois," right?
Yeah.
So the whole entire time I'm like, Rex, you're being a dick to this lady now, because if you find Saskia, what are you gonna? You're like, thanks for helping. See ya. Like Rex, I think is I the reason why I pull out the knowledge theme from this is because I don't think that Rex is doing this for love. I think it is so much more selfish than that. And I think that's what these scenes are set up to make us feel, is that like Rex, while it's not that he doesn't love and he doesn't, and it's not that he doesn't care, it's that as a character, he's selfish. He's almost like sociopathic in his own way. He's not considering the feelings of these people around him. He is in it for knowledge. And that question of, do you take the knowledge or do you just take the safety, right? And even though the safety might be the right thing, because then he can help people find out, he's like, my wife was kidnapped. She is dead. There was a dude who did this. He's from France or whatever. I can find his car, get his license plates. Instead, he's like, I have to know. I have to know. I can't not know. So
Yeah,
I will die for this knowledge.
yeah, and he does. And I think what he was fearful of is that if he were turn him in, that's his last chance because he could, in some ways, be caught but never sentenced, and once or be sentenced but never tell you what really happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he was selfish for all the wrong reasons, and it costed him his life. Because yeah, he didn't have to go to the length at which he did, because he had all the answers, just didn't have that last bit of knowledge, and he couldn't live with that.
It's funny because like they gave him at least two very very particular opportunities to choose knowledge versus his life. Like, because I feel like Raymond was a little bit like he was obfuscating the truth. He wasn't like, "Hey, I'm gonna kill you," but he was doing pretty much everything
To tell you that I'm going to kill you.
right. Because like the whole story is leading up to it in the car. He's like in the car. He's telling him all about how he's a sociopath, how he just wants to kill. Like he's like, I just want to do it. I just want to be able to do this. I want to kill these people. And like, yeah, dude, he killed her. Come on. But then he's like, now you can choose to drink this coffee,
Which
and
will
it
make
has
you
a sleeping pill
sleepy.
in it. I told you about this, so it's your choice. I've convinced you, or you'll never know. It's like, dog, you know, you know, and yet Raymond still says, I need that knowledge. And again, I'm not Raymond, excuse me, Rex. I'm sounding a little bit critical of Rex here. In the way that his character is set up in this film, it's very believable. Rex isn't a perfect person. He does, however, seem to have at least enough depth for me to believe that he would make poor decisions, and that doesn't necessarily make him an unbelievable character. This actually seem like they
Yeah,
would be in character for him. So I do
yeah,
want to say that, like
yeah,
me being critical of these choices might be actually just the movie working.
yeah. You're like, it's easy for us to judge Rex in this situation because we're
Mm-hmm.
not the ones left wondering. Because, yeah, if you ask me if I wanted to know something like for what it really is, I probably would want that answer. But having sat with Raymond on a car ride for such a time
Mm-hmm. And
and
he's just
him explaining who he is and what he's about,
mm-hmm.
that would give me enough closure to know that, oh, this guy is batshit insane, and
Yeah, yeah,
I do not want to know whatever answer he has for me, even if it means I get the closure I need. Like, fuck that. Like, I I don't think he's helping Saskia either in this situation, because now you let him win.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
now what what payment does he have to owe to anybody now? Like, who's gonna be the one to look for him? Nobody. Obviously, nobody was really giving a shit about Saskia. 3 years, still no fucking leads.
And they
He
made it
sucked so bad. He saw him in plain sight, and he still didn't fucking realize that Raymond was fucking there the entire time.
the
He's like,
fucking that cafe scene. I thought was really well done because I'm like, where is he everywhere right now? Because like they had like two different people that look like Raymond. The dude on the balcony, which is apparently where Raymond grew up. Find out.
"Oh, is that what happened? I didn't fucking catch that."
Yeah, so when Raymond jumps off the
Is that Saint
balcony,
Cone?
yeah, when he jumps off the balcony,
That's Saint
that's the
Cone.
same place. And St. Combe, thank you. That's exactly right. But he's actually the one sitting at the table behind him.
Doesn't
He's
matter
like,
what he's sitting behind him.
and it's like it's so bad because Rex he's paranoid about it. He's sitting there. He's like, I can tell that he's watching me right now, and he's absolutely correct. But like, you don't like actually look around. He's literally right next to you, staring directly at you with no food on his table.
Yeah, Rex. This is why it probably took him so long. 3 years. He sucks.
Yeah,
He's not a good detective.
he's not. He's not.
He dresses well, but he's not a good detective.
Oh, I mean, you know,
He's a sharp dresser. I like the way Rex
yeah,
dressed.
yeah. Rex
I like.
Rex had a pretty clean fit. Um, it's hard. It's hard because most of these European films, I find that almost to be true, just exclusively. You know,
Yeah,
they,
very distinct style. Like he could wear what he was wearing in that movie, and you could put him in today's day and age, and it'd work. That's not always true.
okay. I'm gonna ask you a question about fashion for a second. So let's segue for a second. Can you? How do you get away with like like I don't know what else to call it. This is a brand, but like a London fog duster.
I don't know. I think you have to find a situation where it fits. But it wasn't even raining. I think you just like. I think you have to have like a long, lanky body.
That's probably what it is, and like
Yeah, you
you
have to have a
definitely.
tall body, like a tall frame, because then the duster kind of looks. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't want to look like one of those dudes who loves the Matrix. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I love the Matrix, so this isn't a everyone loves the Matrix. Don't worry, it's not about you. It's
yeah.
about the duster on you.
If you have a duster that you enjoy wearing, we're not throwing shade at you. You rock that duster.
Live
Just
your
know
life.
that some dusters work better on tall, fitted men than they do on short. Not saying you're short. You're about my height. Yeah,
I'm
I'm
fairly
kind of
average.
yeah. And so you just have to find the one that fits
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
perfectly because it is a hard. It's one of those hard things to wear. Like if you don't know how to style it well, it doesn't fit well. It's just gonna look awkward.
Yeah, it's like if you're wearing like one of those punk or biker leather jackets. If you're wearing it
Yeah,
and it's out of place, yeah, everyone's gonna know.
this guy's a phony.
You look at him like that's not that cool. Come on,
That's
man.
cool.
Anyway, fashion show over. So, cinematography, because I feel like we should touch on it for just a second. I
Sure.
didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't have like the shot coming out of the tunnel. I thought was pretty cool. Other than that, I wasn't like overly wowed by anything. But how I do think that for the film that it set up, it felt very much like realism was what it was going for, and I think it achieved realism pretty well.
Yeah, I get
Um,
what you're saying. Like you would want to believe that this could be happening right now in today's,
mm-hmm.
like at any point, like in your world.
Exactly. Like it wasn't overly artsy, but there's like shots of them driving and they're close up and they're talking to each other, and it's like, yeah, that does look like people who are driving and close up and talking to each other. Um, the actual like scene where he's kidnapping Saskia, so the one time we actually see him using the chloroform, which was easily, besides the actual coffin, was the most brutal scene of the movie. Was shot in that really close up view, so you could really feel for Saskia. But it wasn't like overly artsy. So I wasn't like shocked and awed by the cinematography, but I do think that it was effective.
One thing I want to know
So
and ask: do you think when it started raining that it started raining in real life? Because none of it felt like a set.
it
Everything felt
it
like it was happening in the location that it was being filmed.
it didn't, and I would be a little. I don't know much about France. I assume they were in France at that point.
Yeah, I think they're
If
in
it
France.
was shot in the actual location, but like that sort of downpour deluge that happens, I can verify for anyone who's not in a place where it rains a lot. Up in here in Oregon, like when it if it wants to rain like that, it just starts. There's no like in between. There's no like drizzle to like get you warmed up or anything. It's just like dumps.
It just starts pouring. It's like,
So
oh shit. Here it's like, oh, it's starting to sprinkle. I can get ready to put on my jacket. Over there, it's just like, like, oh
it,
fuck, I gotta put on my jacket.
100%. I'll be like sitting inside, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere you hear just like everywhere all over the roof, and you're like, okay, it's dumping. Thank you.
What the fuck? It was literally just quiet a moment ago.
Yeah, it's like the streets will like flood every like 35 minutes, and then they'll go away because the rain just stops. It's just off and on like a spigot.
Because it
Um.
didn't. It happened so immediate, right?
Mm-hmm.
From what I can recall, like They were talking outside. He was pondering whether or not he actually wanted to drink the fucking liquid uh, sleeping pill, and he's like, "No, I'm good." And then he starts walking away, and then he walks to the tree, and then when he walks to the tree, it just starts pouring, and now he's just doing circles, trying to like fight this idea that he has in his head. Like, do I really want to know? Like, fuck, I want to know.
I see. And to me, I'm like, if it wasn't real, good on them because I could buy it. But if it was real, it added to the scene. That's for sure
Yeah,
because it definitely made it like more. It carried more weight,
it
and it
carried more
also
time and pressure. Like now, it's like, oh shit, it's raining. I can't just keep staying out here and waiting for him to leave. It's raining. I gotta like come up with a decision now because I'm
mhm.
just gonna be stuck here in the rain. What am I doing?
Yeah. Um, I would guess that because it's a movie, I would guess that they did it, but that's just a guess. That's a pure guess.
Uh,
I
I
will
had.
say, oh, hit me.
I was gonna say. I was just gonna ask really quick. Did you know that from at what point did you figure out that he was gonna get buried? Like I knew she was buried. I knew she was dead. And for some reason, I knew she was buried because he was looking at the tree and the coins that were there, and it just gave me this idea that like, oh, she has to be underground or somewhere. I thought she was underground there for some reason.
Strictly speaking, as far as like actually getting buried, I didn't figure it out till the end. Um, Dead, I was almost certain of it. There's no chance he's keeping this lady alive with his family. Like, there's no chance. He wasn't particularly like great at getting her in the first place, so I think he would be even worse at like keeping her
Harboring.
locked up. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we see his preparation for getting her. We would definitely like he definitely would not have been able to ignore the preparation to preparing a place, as you said, to harbor her. So
Yeah.
there was
I
never a
mean,
question of
the
like,
kids
is
would
she
have
alive?
known. Yeah, definitely for sure. Yeah, you're right. Like, there's no way this person is alive because if he has a family, he's not gonna risk his family's safety.
Right, and like we see that in a lot of movies now, where like the killer will risk the family safety, or they will risk it. But I think this movie's more grounded in reality. I don't feel like this movie is like really trying too hard to hit you with anything out of the box. It wants you to feel like this could be real.
What felt different was the fact that evil won.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was no happy ending. Does that happen a lot nowadays with horror films? I guess in some way it does. I mean, Sinister doesn't leave you with a happy ending.
I think typically when they leave you with a bad ending, it's usually more like up for interpretation. You know,
Yeah,
like you can make a decision on what ending happened, what you were supposed to get out of it. This one didn't. You knew exactly what happened at the end of this one. Raymond got his way. Person who's asking about him's dead. He's gonna move on and be okay with his life if the last one was any indication.
yeah, because I
Yeah.
think that's why he waited for Lenka to leave for him to show face.
Which makes it makes a lot of sense. And the way he did it was also like, can you imagine being hit with that decision where you're just standing outside and you're just walking and some guy like it's like, I'm the one you're looking for. You're like, the fuck? And then they're like, you have 5 minutes to decide whether or not you get in my car. Otherwise, you're gonna lose this forever. And this is like, there's no cell phones, right? Because this is 1988. There's nothing. You get in that car, you're as good as gone. No one's ever gonna know where you went. And that's gotta be running through the back of your mind. But also, you're never gonna know where
Unless
this
he
guy.
grabbed the license plate.
That's the one like bright spot where I'm like, what did he not have the license plate? Like, what was stopping
He
in this
did.
part?
He has to have a license plate. He's crossing borders.
That's true. It's true.
He has a passport and everything. He's crossing borders. You can't just enter another country probably without a license plate, a registration of sort.
I mean, you could stop and take it and put it on and take it off.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
like he could have been like, well, before I go and bother this guy, I'm going to take off my license plate real quick. But we don't see that, and I don't see any indication of that. So I mean that's the one. Like there likely was other options. Like if he had gotten the composite of this dude, and he's like, hey, this is what he looks like. This is the guy who took Saskia. He could have at least moved forward. Like this wasn't honestly his only opportunity, but I think the time, this pressure that he was under with this time constraints, is really where Raymond got through this and where it closes up this plot hole. Is that Rex didn't have this opportunity to make a fully informed decision, and he was probably freaking the hell out. He's been looking and obsessing over this for 3 years, and he's just hit with it one day, just like
Yeah,
bam.
that is kind of crazy to think about. Like, you've been obsessing over this thing, and you finally get it in front of you, and you just like you don't. He probably fully didn't know how to react, so he just started hitting him. But once he
I was
started
glad
hitting,
that he hit him because that was more like human, like
yeah,
like even if you're lying to me, fuck you for saying that.
yeah, you asshole. But no, it was definitely him, and like I think when he saw Raymond wasn't fighting back, he probably knew like, oh shit, this probably is him.
Because he's like he's not trying to prove anything to me. He's not trying to go to fight. Whatever he's talking about right now is what he really wants.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, yeah, Raymond was for the most part very stoic.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to catch a beat on him.
Mm-hmm. He didn't let off a lot. He didn't show much in front of his family. His family also didn't show a lot, so you couldn't get anything from them. Like, is he happy? Is he sad? Whatever. You just can't tell.
One
Um,
thing
mm-hmm.
I wanted to say, which is a funny, going back to cinematography, I'm not sure if this falls under cinematography, but I like the small, minor details that this film does. One being uh, very unimportant to the film, but I liked it when in the beginning, when Rex is driving and he's about to turn a corner around a rock, he honks. I was like, oh, that's so grounded in reality because that's something you would do to like warn the person who's driving on the other
Mm-hmm.
side, the blind side of the rock, that a car is approaching.
Like, stay in
I
your
like
goddamn
that.
lane, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I like that. It just kind of goes back to what you're saying. Like this movie is very grounded in reality. A lot of like things that you would do. At least I would hope you would do as a good driver. Minus like not filling up your tank when you have the opportunity. Like fucking idiot, dude. But still, like I don't see how that tunnel scene, other than the fact that it's very like riveting and very like heart poundingly thrilling. To it's like not sure what you are expecting, like especially if a car would have come. But like outside of that, like that doesn't really do much other than maybe her panicking, talking about a golden egg dream. Like,
Yeah, again, my only guess on this one is that it establishes that Rex is someone who can be deeply selfish, and it's not
okay,
just like this undying love for Saskia that's pulling him forward. It is like his lack of knowledge. That's a guess. My only other guess is that and this is a stretch. All right, so this is a full stretch. Maybe it's like showing why Saskia would go so far to get him a keychain because she really wants to like mend that gap, that was created earlier.
hmm.
But that's again, if that's it, they don't do a super great job at explaining that, or not even explaining it, but like truly making it felt.
Yeah, like again, I like the tunnel scene a lot, but I don't know where it plays into the entire film. Maybe it's the fact that you're trapped and you're able to escape when given the opportunity.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. It might establish, that okay, we were talking about Tyler the Creator and the first track having chromacopia and then the last track having chromacopia. Okay, what if in this movie it's the same thing and we just found the overture? Is that in the first sequence we see a tunnel, darkness all around, and then he leaves Saskia, and then last scene we see darkness all around, but it's him.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the whole thing. Maybe it's like setting up for this. Like these are the bookends.
yeah, because that's basically the opener.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably like Act One.
Yeah, because I don't really strongly remember a lot of things happening before the car and seeing if they did, which they might have, but
But
I don't remember them.
they're just
So
driving around. The music is ominous, and I was kind of scared in the beginning, thinking like, where is this gonna lead to?
hmm
And I was like, oh shit, something scary is gonna happen in this tunnel.
and I do think when you brought up Hostel, that was like such a good explanation of what I was talking about in the beginning. It was like we've seen movies like Hostel, so like we've seen like the absolute most depraved thing that could happen in this sort of situation now. And where that's one of
Yeah,
those where like, this movie's less terrifying because like I've seen people get abducted on vacation and get cut open.
like very macabre and grisly at
hmm
that too. Like it was just like, if like it it scares you into foreign travel, and that's not the case ever. Like, please go visit these countries. They're great countries, probably. I liked France. It's not my favorite country. The three countries that I went to when I went to Europe, I went to uh, Spain and London. Uh, I like those cities way more. But no disrespect to France. I just really like those cities a lot more. Um, but it would scare you. You're in a foreign country. No one speaks your language, or like you speak very minimal, and for you to get stuck with a lunatic, who's there to help you? No one really. And so that's the scariest part about these films that happen outside of America, because it's hard for us to get a get a beat on things. Like a lot of the time when I was watching it, I was like, I don't know where this is going. Like I can't read any of these guys' characters really because they're speaking a language I can't pick up
hmm
on certain inflections, certain like I get the sense, but I don't fully grasp what is
hmm
being shown to me on screen because of
hmm
the language barrier. And so
There's always this
that's
thing,
one
it,
terrifying fact.
right? And so like side note, there's always this thing that like I found that with foreign movies, um, and especially ones that are in foreign language, not dubbed, I'm very much ready to rate the acting higher than with an American movie. And I'm always wondering, I'm like, is that just because I can't catch the vocal inflections? Because I don't
Yeah,
really understand like what the vocal
they
inflection
could
should
be
be
saying
doing. So
something completely awful. We're just so ignorant to the idea of like, yeah, he delivered that line perfect. What are you talking about?
right, I'm like I'm almost judging just like completely physical acting and none of the like the vocal inflections are emotional. Like I guess the emotions do show up in physical acting, but like their facial expressions were great.
Yeah, fantastic. They were selling the shit out of certain scenes. I was like, I only got minorly bored during the fucking um when he's talking to Lanky in his little task force building, and he started. Oh, okay. Help me understand. Like, I'm sure he was looking to see if anyone had mentioned Saskia, but the computer, when it just started going Saskia, it started like matrixing together. Like that's no way a program worked like that. That's so
No, no, no,
ridiculous.
no. I I I can't be certain of this, but my understanding, as far as like what I've made up in my head, is that this was like the Shining situation. You know what I mean? Like he is so obsessed that he is
Uh,
just hallucinating this now.
uh,
Like this is so his sole focus. And
okay.
that's a guess because otherwise you're exactly right. Like it doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not a good way to load the.
It's so like the one scene that I think really I didn't get bored during it, but I was like, why is this happening? Is when they went up to I forget it was like some house together,
Oh, up
and
there, and he
like
started freaking out.
yeah,
He
like
started
he's like
chasing this car that he had once gone to the fucking building.
was this just like a PTSD flashback or was he like because like when he like lies down, you're like, is he having a heart attack? Because this dude is like Saskia,
Yeah, not an
Saskia.
egg. It's like started going on about an egg.
It's like what is going on, dude? Like why? It
he
literally is
was
like,
like,
I had the dream, and that's how I knew I would find her. And I'm like, dog, you had the dream because you haven't shut up about her for 2 years. And like, not that that's negative, but like, can we put the cart before the horse here? So
yeah, that was just that was weird. That was a weird scene. I didn't fully understand the point of that, and a lot of it. Okay, just I'm gonna circle back to the minor details that I really liked. The honking.
okay.
I liked the soda can
Mm-hmm.
when he kicked it in the beginning, and then later in the film, you see it get smashed by him because she had left it, I guess, on the ground. I don't know why. Oh no, she probably it looked like she left it behind on the back wheel, but I think she probably left it in the front wheel for
Mm-hmm.
some reason because she went to set it down as she was entering the car, and which is crazy also to think that you're at a busy gas station, and I'm surprised nobody was able to see you fucking just manhandle a woman in plain sight.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, this is where I think like his sling and this whole thing probably worked out really well for him. Is that people would just ignore him. You know what I mean? Like, they'd be like, "Oh, there's no chance that he's an issue."
And the other girl, the girl who was originally gonna help him, I'm surprised she didn't go like warn the tenant and be like, "Hey, this guy asked me to help him with his fucking, what's it called, or sell me something." I forgot what he was asking her.
Yeah, he's asking
Oh,
her
he
to
was
help
helping
move the
ask her to
trailer.
help the trailer. I'm surprised she didn't go off and say like, "Yeah, this guy's doing some weird shit."
Or the husband afterwards, right? Because the husband comes out, he's like, "Hey, what the is wrong with you?"
No, that was later.
That was there.
Oh, that was later, but that was a different occurrence because that's when he failed. That's when he found out that like I can't look like I'm an able body. I have to look kind of crippled because my
Right, right,
trail is
right,
so
right, right.
light.
100%. Okay, yep. I do agree with you. And yes.
There was that, and then one final little detail that I liked that they included was like during the final kidnapping where he has his arm in a brace, he's reading the newspaper, he's wearing the turtleneck that his daughter just gave him.
I
I
didn't
thought
even
that
catch that. That's nice. That is nice.
it was like that is so weird that you're doing this awful thing and is such a nice gift from
Hmm.
an innocent, wholesome person.
It's just like it's just wrapped around, sociopathy.
That's a sociopath. He does not even think twice about what that sweater means to him.
Yeah.
He could
There's
care
a
less.
there's a whole angle of this film we're not discussing, and
Which
that
is
is the Fignon angle. What
the
the hell is
what?
Fignon?
What is Fignon?
They were talking
What
about
is
like
that
she's
brought up?
she's got a yellow jersey like Fignon, and then they keep playing the soccer matches in the background of these scenes.
You thought it was a soccer match? It was a Tour de France, I thought.
It could have been a Tour de France. I'm so
That's
ignorant
right.
about this. I was so confused. I'm like, what what's happening?
Because he was talking about in the car, because that's originally what they had. I think it planned out was
Hmm.
to like get a good view of the bike race and seeing like because he was like, oh, amateur bike racing is its own sport too. It's not just Tour de France. Like you could be an amateur bike rider and still like compete. And he was saying like, oh yeah, the best spot to view the race is this spot because this is where you know you could see the the position shift because in biking a lot of time you're like in your position
Hmm.
until you find a moment to race past that person, and that's what is exciting probably for a lot of racers to see in person is the switch.
Is that moment? So that's when you're looking for it. It's like what
But
opportunity
yeah,
is
I
on?
think
Okay,
because I
that
was
makes
catching
sense.
that too. It's like it did sound like a soccer match, but I don't know what's going on.
That's 100% the issue. Is like I was just catching the like the inflection and like how excited they sounded, and then like the words that would just show up, and I was like, and that was the only part I was confused because they kept bringing up Fignon, and I think I'm saying that right, Fignon, uh, And I was like, what is this? Does this mean something to me? She's wearing a yellow jersey, talking about golden eggs. But then I'm like, I don't know enough about this to like make this connection.
Yeah, I wonder what the book has to say about
Mm-hmm.
golden eggs, because they made it a point in the film, but didn't really go too deep, other than that it revolves around a nightmare
And finding
that she
yourself
constantly has
out in
when she
space.
was living.
I'm at the end of my notes.
I think I have little to none left either.
Take a look,
I'm,
because I think
I'm
I'm
at,
ready for you to hit me with it.
Yeah, because what's it called? I was going off the cuff because this movie, while it has a lot going on, it doesn't really go too deep into a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, the plot is very straightforward. I don't think there's a lot to really dissect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a easy film to watch, and you'll be. I mean, I feel like I was pulled in the beginning.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, Nick picked a good one, and uh, yeah,
It,
I don't think I have much to say. The last thing I'll probably say is this: I liked this scene a lot when they're she's mad at Rex for leaving her in the car,
mm-hmm.
and they create this pact. And at the end of their little um, recital of the pact, the last words they say in that pact is "I will never be abandoned," or "will never be abandoned by me."
Mm-hmm.
And then they're shaking hands, and they're smiling, and then they look at their hands, and then I feel like they have this moment of like, what did we just agree to? Like this seems very like weird, and like kind of in a what something bad's gonna happen. Like I don't like this. I don't like that we just did this.
And then theoretically, they never really are abandoned after that.
Yeah,
Not
they're
in
kind of
any.
buried next to each other, so they're good.
Yeah. Um.
But
Yeah.
that was it. That's all I have. What do you have?
I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into the rating of this film. So what I got out of this is that it is a film that is immaculately acted, that doesn't strive to tell too much more of a story than it needs to for what it sets out to do. The cinematography, while not wowing me, did, however, set the stage and present itself very nicely. The pacing was strong, even if the editing was unremarkable, and the music really set a sound stage that helped ratchet tension up when it needed to, and otherwise helped you feel pretty normal. I gave story a 4, acting a 5, cinematography a 3, editing a 3, and music a 4, which is a really strong ass score when I put it all together. So it's like a 7.5 out of 10,
Okay, sweet.
which is pretty much in line with where it lands on IMDb. Surprisingly, I watching the film and gut take, I probably would give it a 6, but I don't think that's actually fair to the film. Again, this is where earlier I talked about like divorcing my current understanding of movies and where I'm at with it versus what the actual film itself is. And one disservice that I definitely had done to it was I had seen the American version of The Vanishing first, so I kind of knew a bit of what was happening, but it was presented very differently here, and I do appreciate what was presented. So the 7.5, strong one, final score.
And right before I go into my final thoughts, I just want to ask you really quick: did you watch this on DVD? Did you get the DVD copy?
I got a Blu-ray, yeah, so it's
You
the
got Blu-ray.
Criterion one, and again, it was very. There were scenes that weren't as clear. You could definitely tell when they could and could not restore the film copy of it, because that's the thing on these Blu-rays is sometimes it gets super grainy out of nowhere, and you're like, that is a scene that they could not restore.
Yeah.
And there were a few of those, so it wasn't like perfect, but very nice. It's not one that I'm mad that it is in my collection now. So
Okay, yeah. My final thoughts. While the gas ran low for Rex and Saskia, this movie did not. From the opening scene, I was captivated by the music, directing, and acting. The pacing of this film will have you gripped to your car seat, but not too tight for those who are claustrophobic trying to make sense of Raymond's predestined mindset. The surrounding French landscape plays a small part in the grand scheme of the film's development and paints a bigger picture that the film is trying to bring to life. Overall, this movie will leave you with thoughts for your significant with about your significant other and appreciate the time you have with them because at the end you'll be asking, would I make that ultimate sacrifice for closure? And I'm giving this an 8 out of 10.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So high scores. High scores. It
I like
was yeah. Again, it was just one like I think the expectation of like most terrifying thing I've ever seen is really what was weighing me down for a while. But like looking at it with removing that lens was so much nicer. I was like,
yeah.
you cannot read what Stanley Kubrick says about this movie before you see this movie.
Yeah, I think he had a lot on his plate to really come up with that conclusion, but at the same time, he didn't have what we have on our plates now.
Mm-hmm. So we've rated the movie. We closed down our chapter on Spoorloos. I just really wanted to say the name of the movie one more time. What do you got for us next time, Andrew? It's your choice, your turn. What is our
Yeah,
Thanksgiving film?
Thanksgiving film, is that what we're heading off to
It
on
will
Nothing
be
After
out
Dark?
on Thanksgiving.
Wow. All right. Um, not sure it's very Thanksgiving. I've never seen this film. I may find out that it is the most Thanksgiving. We'll soon find out. The next film is a 1985 American black comedy film directed by Martin Scorsese and written by Joseph Minion. The movie we are set to watch is After Hours.
After Hours. So we get a Scorsese film up in here. I've never seen it, so great choice. Well, let's watch some new Scorsese.
We'll find out. Yeah.
Let's talk about some Scorsese up in this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Vigil Drowned.
Chromacopia. Chromacopia.